Well, the chickens have come home to roost. Time to do the church. Welcome back to another episode of Forward in Rid. I'm James, and today we're going to work on the church.
Once I'd completed the gardens of the cottages, I wasted no time in moving on to the church. The first job I did was to make some gravestones. I used thick grey card, cut to various shapes that obviously looked like gravestones, painted them, and then weathered them up. At this point, I also felt that the church needed a wall in front of it on its border. So that was going to be the first task.
So I always intended for the church to have some wall around it. I did buy this, which is like dry stone walling for Model Scene. It's like, I don't know, I assume it is plastic, but it's a bit rubbery. And it's also awful and rubbish. And it doesn't butt together, and the stones don't line up. And you get 3 of these and 4 of these, so that doesn't even make sense really, I suppose. 1, 2, well, maybe you can put them together, but they're just awful. They're really just, they don't look right, and they need a flat bottom, which obviously my terrain doesn't have. So not going to use them. I'm going to use this. This is the walls that came with the cottage kit. Now obviously I don't need them because I've got a fence around the cottage. So I'm going to paint this up, representing slate, obviously. And they just so happen, when they're next to each other, to be the right length to go across the front of the church. So let's get some paint on them. And that is the wall all glued together. I'm just going to let that dry and cure so it doesn't bend in the middle. I want to pick it up and move on to something else. Now, some of you who've watched some of my other videos may recall me saying this a long time ago, but when I was working on the church, I said I did want to try and get some lighting in there. And one of my kids had got one of those tea lights that flickers. And they put it in the church, and I thought the effect was really good. So I'm now going to try and attempt to take that tea light apart and make it a more useful light, because obviously I'm going to glue the church down. I won't be able to switch it off or change the battery, and see if I can run it off the main power. Right, okay. Well, I've pulled the light apart. Wasn't too difficult, just get a screwdriver in there and it comes apart like that. So you've got this bit underneath with the battery, and it's a very simple circuit. You have the switch which the positive arm of the light goes through, and then the negative just sits here. Negative sits on the bottom of the battery, and then the positive touches the light, and that's how it works. So I've got 2 choices. I could just take the light out and put some wires on, extend the circuit, and just use the 3-volt battery. But then that's just relying on batteries for the layout all the time. So alternatively is to build this onto a circuit. So I've got a box of resistors. And I went on the internet, and I'm only slightly more enlightened to what I was before I went on the internet, and can roughly read a resistor now. Now, apparently I needed a 1K resistor and a 330 resistor to reduce 12 volts to 3 volts, even though this is a 14 volt. But I don't have a 330 resistor. This one I think is a 550 from my calculations. However, if I put it in the controller and then I'll just take this out, put the positive arm on here and the negative one there, and it's embarrassing me by not working whilst I'm filming. It did work. You saw it work. Oh dear. Well, it still works on the 1K resistor. There you are. And then the 550 just reduces it down, so it won't be as bright. And by saying it won't be as bright at the current moment, it won't even, there we are, because they won't even light. So that's how I'm going to build the circuit and then put the light into the layout. Here we are then, that's all soldered together now, and as you can see the light is working. I don't know if you can see the flicker, but there is a bit of a flicker on there. I don't know if it's better when you put it in here. Yeah, you kind of notice a bit more, so I might keep it like that, but we'll see. Put it in the church. I've now got the light in place. So I've just drilled a hole, put it in. I've used the base of the candle just to hold all the wires and the resistors in, and then I've just taken the rubber flame off the top and put it over the LED. I don't know, it seems to improve the flickering, in fact. I'm not quite sure why, but it does. So that's in there, that's where it's going to stay, and then I'm going to secure the church and bed it in the same method I've done with the cottage, by using the decorator's cork around the edge. I'm going to glue the gravestones down. The wall, now I was going to put it here, that was the intention. There was going to be a wall there and then sort of a bush here to sort of mark out the boundary of the church, but I feel everything's a bit too cramped and close together, so I've decided I'm going to put the wall on the road. So I think it looks quite nice there. It needs a bit of weathering, it's still a bit bright with this plaster mortar, but apart from that it's looking all right. And I'm just going to leave the church area open, and just sort of the boundary will kind of be indicated by the mown grass and then more wild plantation and vegetation all around the surrounding area. So that's the plan. Painted around the cork on the bottom. I got impatient, I couldn't wait for it to dry, but that's fine. I just did it very gently in a soft brush so as not to disturb it. I've also attached the wall. Again, I've used decorator's cork to hold it in place and bed it in, and then painted with acrylics just to blend the cork in. So next job, another static grass job. Just going to do all this area here. I'm going to be using the Pico 2mm patchy grass, because I think you're higher up the hill, it's not going to look as lush as what it is down here, where, you know, obviously the water flows and there's a river. So That's the theory anyway. So I'm going to go get on with that. Here we are. This is result of 2 goes with the static grass in the sections. I think it's coming out quite nicely. I've plopped the tree back in. This is actually an N-gauge tree, but I think it sort of fits on the layout quite well. I think anything too big is going to sort of dominate it a bit too much due to the size of the layout. And also, you know, it's up on top of the hill, so probably wouldn't grow that tall anyway. But yeah, this front bit here is looking a little unrealistic at the moment, but you know, it's just early stages. So I'm just going to carry on with the static grass. I think I'm just going to keep sweeping across the top of the hill. I'm just working things out from there. Well, I was only going to go to about here with the static grass, but as you can see, I've just carried on. I've got a bit carried away. But I think it's looking great. Really enjoying the slate just sort of appearing through the patches of grass. I think it's really effective. So I'm going to just keep going now, I think. I'm going to do around here. Now, there won't be so much static grass here as in the other part because I want to keep this rock face exposed for the majority. So I'll probably have a bit of static grass on the top. And then a few patches down the mountainside or hillside. And then that's pretty much the back sort of covered and ready for more detailing. But anyway, I'll pan out. And this is sort of an overall view of the layout at the moment. It's coming along nicely, I think. If I do say so myself.
And I did say so. And I was so pleased with the results, I decided to continue with the rest of the layout. I applied the static grass around the cliff face, leaving the majority exposed so it would really pop with the green grass. The effect was quite stunning. However, I hadn't forgot what the original purpose of this video was, and that was to concentrate on the church. I had to wait for the glue to dry, but once done so, I was going to add longer layers of static grass in various places along the hilltop, with only a minimal amount around the church. Spray glue wasn't going to cut it this time. It's too vast and spread out. I had to use a pipette and apply some woodland scenic cement around the walls of the church to apply the longer grass. As well as the church, I concentrated on the rock face by the road. Once all the static grass was applied, I used this handheld vacuum cleaner to clean it up. This handheld vacuum cleaner is utterly useless. Although it's handy for its size, it's got a battery life of about 10 minutes, and I wouldn't recommend buying it, as you'll see later in the video when I end up using a vacuum cleaner.
And so a second layer of static grass was applied, this time using medium straw by green seeds.
I then made a second pass with the medium straw, just to really give it a thick tone around the hilly areas. And then once the church was done, I moved on to the rest of the hill.
I also needed to make a path from the steps that I'd made in a previous video. To do this, I used olive green turf and a mixture of fine brown scatter, making a small pathway that led up the hill to look like ramblers used the spot often enough for their trekking. The next job was to tackle the bright mortar lines of the road wall. To do this, I used weathering powders, a dark brown and a moss green at first, followed by a soot black, which I also used around the tunnel mouth to show the exhaust fumes from the steam locomotives. I sealed with matte varnish before adding a little bit of static grass and vegetation in front of the wall.
Right, with the many layers of grass now on, I want to put another top coat of grass before I start adding in the bracken. So to make sure that the spray glue doesn't, obviously stick to the exposed rock face, I've just gone around with a bit of masking tape. I'm just going to concentrate some 10mm straw coloured grass around here. This is sort of going to be the real built up area, more dense vegetation. So that's the plan. Okay, there's one layer on. The glue did seize up, as it does tend to be a problem with this spray glue, so I haven't quite got it on as well as I like, so I'm just going to go over with a second coat, and I'm just going to do a bit more around here as well, just to sort of spread that long grass out. So here I go again. And the tape's now been removed. I've vacuumed up the remaining bits of static grass. There's still a few bits called the hill, but I'll clean them off with a brush. One of these cheap artist fan brushes is quite good for this. Picks up really well. So yeah, I'll just go around, just then catch any loose bits. And then I think I'll start working on the bracken around here. Might put a little bit more longer grass just behind the back of the church here, and then maybe a little bit round here. But I mean, I quite like this. I think this looks quite nice. It looks very soft. And eventually, once I've done this side, I will then move over to the other side of the hill. Before putting more bracken here, I'm going to come back to what I originally was intending to do for this video and concentrate here. I've now replanted the tree. As I said before, it is an engaged tree, but as you see, there's some gravestones around it, so it's sort of a new tree, I suppose, because otherwise they would have had difficulty digging into the ground and putting coffins in with all those tree roots in the way. So probably planted sometime after these graves were put here. So it's a young tree, and then you can just about make out I've got some dead leaves on the floor because obviously it's autumn. So these come from a brand called TP, which according to the back is Tasmar Products. I picked it up in the model shop just outside of Toaster, the railway conductor. Quite a good model shop if you're ever in the area. It's just a little bit up the A5. Yeah, they're great. They really do sort of sell the effect of autumn. So yeah, as I say, I'm going to concentrate on the church for a minute, and I'm going to do this path. So I think a nice gravel path leading up to the church will look quite nicely.
I started off by layering PVA glue on the base of the footpath. I then followed up by adding fine light grey ballast to represent the path. I used a coffee stirrer to apply small amounts so as not to spill the ballast onto the grass, and then used the stirrer to tamp out the ballast to form a nice smooth footpath. Once dry, I used some AK weathering washes to weather the path. I started off with a layer of light dust, followed by some neutral grey. Once dried, I added a few more dried leaves, and the scene was set.
That's the path complete. I've put some more dry leaves over the top of it, spray glue down first, dry leaf on top, and then use matte varnish just to seal the leaves in place. So I'm pretty happy with what's happened here with the church. I think it looks all right. Might come back to it just to check over for any details later on, but for now, I'm pleased with how it's looking. I'm going to work on this area here now. So I've got the forest floor, my bush, as I think it's described as, but it's just like this moss type stuff again. That looks quite like bracken. So I'm just going to glue it across here, and then I'm going to dye it as I did before with the washes to make it more autumnal colours. Here we go. Well, that's the gist of it. I'm not going to make you watch me put the entire lot on. I'll just come back when I'm done. And here is the final result. The moss has been added, glued down, and then dyed with Humbrol and aka rust coloured washes to give it that autumnal look, same as I've done in the previous episode down here. I've also made a few rubberised horsehair bushes, covering them in flock. And even one of my lynching bushes that I'd made in the previous video has also made it onto the layout. But I'm feeling the scene needs a few more trees. And so therefore, I'm going to have a go at using sea moss.
The instructions that came with the sea moss trees were very vague. They first recommended putting the sea moss in some warm water and adding a bit of tint if you wanted to colour the branches. I added a bit of acrylic paint to the water, hoping that this would do the trick. However, it did not, and I wasn't really sure why I was putting the trees in the warm water in the first place. Well, apparently, it is quite useful to straightening the trunks out, but these 3 trees had pretty straight trunks anyway, so I was probably wasting my time. However, after 10 minutes, I pulled them out of the water to find that the dye hadn't worked, they were still the same colour, but they were now just very wet. So the next part was to dry them. I weighted the trees and hung them off the washing line, waiting for them to dry. I then follow up with a coat of brown Humbrol spray.
Here we are, the tree's been sprayed with a little bit of Humbrol brown, and you've just got these little weird leaf bits on here, so I'm just going to go around and just cut these off, and hopefully that will then be ready for adding a bit of foliage. So there we are, I've just removed the leaves off this one. Now the instructions recommend that you use matte varnish, spray it with, and then put your foliage on top. So I've got the green scenes leaf foliage of autumn colours, so it's like a green, yellowy, brown in there. So I'm just going to play around with this one, see how it comes out. And if this doesn't work, I'll just go back to the spray glue. I've also got this stuff as well that I've been playing around with, but it's not very good. It comes out like a sort of bit like silly string. And I did it on a couple of the rubberised horsehair bushes and managed to cover it with foliage, but if I didn't have it there, you just think it was like being attacked by spiders. It looked a bit strange. So I'm going to try this now then. It's a little bit mad. And sprinkle this on and see how it comes out. Recommends using a sieve, but I don't have a sieve, so I'm just going to do this. Oh, it's coming out okay. A little bit more. It's very effective, although this matte stuff does stink. I really should wear my mask. you know what? Screw it. I'm going to try the layering spray. And immediately it's gone all over the branch. That's great, isn't it? There we go. Yeah, I prefer the layering spray. I think this is a bit more effective. I know it says not to use it, but I don't know. I wasn't convinced by the matte varnish. Yeah, that's come out a lot nicer, that has. And you can see it's just transforming it already. A little bit more around here. I think that should do it. And there you are. That's a sea moss tree. I think that's come out really well. I'm going to have a go on the other two. And this is the final results of my sea moss trees. So this is the sort of the late leaf, I suppose. No, early leaf even. The yellow and browns and greens. And I put a bit of leaf litter around the bottom. You can also see I've now gone and put static grass on this side of the layout to finish off the hillside. I think it's come out quite well. Although it does look very green on this shot. And then I'll come over here. And here are my other two trees. I'll just have a nice little wooded area just in the paddock here where the sheep are grazing. And I think they come out really well. Definitely some nice autumnal colours. And you sort of pull out and look across the bridge. I think that looks quite nice. Whilst I've got the camera on the river, I'll just show you, I've just gone back over it because I did up the hill and then I felt that it was a bit too bare down by the river, which seemed a bit daft because that's obviously where water is. I think you get more lush grass there even in the later autumn. So I've just sort of put the long summer green at the very bottom, which is obviously going to get the most amount of moisture. And I've got the medium straw just going around the fence there. If you look at roadsides, any time of year, it's sort of very yellowy grass, sort of around that part of the road. So there we are. I think I might just put a little bit more bracken on, but otherwise, I think the greenery is pretty much done. And it'll be time to move on to the road and the river, and this quarry at some point. Well, I think I shall tie the episode up nicely. I'm very pleased with these trees. I think the scenery is coming along really nicely now. As I say, it's almost there. There's just a few little details to add here and there. I'm just going to work on this area here at the front. And it's the road and the river. So next time, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. But if you do watch, I very much appreciate it. And if you have watched the end of this, I appreciate that too. If you hit the like button and the subscribe, I appreciate it even more. A lot of appreciation out there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.